Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today for the live NASIPA webinar. My name is Mandy Aquilina. I'm the Executive Director of NASIPA, and I will be the moderator for today's call. We will be utilizing the Q&A box, so feel free to ask your questions in that Q&A box, and Mark and Al will be happy to answer those along the way during the webinar. PowerPoint-free webinar today, so it's a little bit of a mind break for us all and just having a conversation. So with us today is Mark DeWall. Mark is currently the SVP and Head of Premium Audit at Davies Group. He developed a database premium audit field software in the 1990s and pioneered internet-based management and tracking systems in the late 90s and early 2000s to use the internet as a platform to manage premium audit functions. He loves both technology and change. Al Sporer has spent his entire career in technology building companies and organizations that sell and deliver enterprise technology and solutions. Al is passionate about customer experience and builds high-performance teams that create and maintain strong customer relationships. He is currently the VP of Sales, Data and Analytics at Majesco. Thank you both for joining us today. I'll go ahead and let you get started.
Thanks, Mandy. Hi, everyone. I will stay on camera with Mark, and so we're going to do this more as a TED Talk Q&A session with me leading. What we didn't put in my bio, and then I'm going to drill Mark on his a little bit. Is that I've been doing AI, ML systems, and that type of technology for the last 10 years. Gone through a couple waves of it and where we're at. So we're gonna talk a little bit about that. Three topics that we're gonna talk about. We're gonna talk about technology. We are going to talk about GenAI, and I'm going to try to keep it, Mark and I are going to try to keep this actually as a useful conversation and not a theoretical one about what we see in the market and where we can actually do things and not what you might see in the Wall Street Journal. And then I think the last topic we're going to talk about is employee experience. And as we talk about this industry and keep and retaining growing, clearly risks do not go down. So with that, Mark, I'm going to ask you my first question. I gave my background a little bit, but you and I have been working together for a little bit of a while here, a couple of years. We've had the opportunity to get to know each other, and your bio talks about the first system that you created, but how in the heck did you fall into premium audit and building technology? And can you give, for the audience, can you give that story, because it's a pretty good one?
It's a really good one, and thanks. And again, thanks everybody for joining us today. I will try to keep it brief because it's quite a long story. But so I'll never forget. Well, I was in college at the University of Illinois. I was in economics class, and it would have been 1983 or probably 1984. And my professor was supposed to be talking about economics, but all he was talking about was microcomputers. And man, was he enthusiastic, and so it caught my attention, early on, and it sounds crazy today for most people that are, certainly younger, really in the last 20 some years, you almost take it for granted. But I think Al and I were both kind of in that group where we saw the evolution of this technology, and if you one of the things that you said about me is that I love change. I do. I lean into it. I love it. I think it's fascinating. It's not going to stop, and so you might as well lean into it. So in the when they say that necessity is the mother of invention, I don't think anything could be more true than with software and development with microcomputers. And so I came into this business. I started in the banking industry. I bought an Apple microcomputer, one of the first people that I know that did that. And I was using desktop publishing in the late 1980s to give me an advantage in the banking world, to be able to teach people about, what is possible and how to talk to clients and all kinds of other things. And I saw a lot of power, in that technology. So then lo and behold, I just had this crazy opportunity to get into this small business in Grand Rapids, Michigan. It was a premium audit business, and there was only, there was 10 employees covering a few areas in Michigan, and I think there was an auditor in Indiana. And I walked into this business, and it was like walking back into 1950 in a lot of ways. So, and all I saw was incredible opportunities for microcomputers into this area to create solutions. But instead of just going headlong into building solutions, I first looked to see, well, actually, I spent 3 years doing premium audits as a field auditor, so I could really understand this industry. And because writing solutions and creating solutions with computers, you don't really understand it. It's usually recipe for disaster, long term. So anyway, so I spent 3 years really learning this, and then came to the conclusion that there were no viable commercial alternatives to solve the problems that I thought needed to be solved for premium auditors. Mostly what was going on was that the auditors were gathering a lot of information in the field, and they would thank the policyholder, and then they'd go home and they would write it up. And that write-up period could take days, a week, what have you. And then inevitably there's questions, so they would have to contact the policyholder a second time. So I thought to myself, that's the first problem that needs to be solved. We have to have a solution in the field that that makes it possible for an auditor to pretty much get the thing done in the field, show a policyholder a completed report along with the exposures, and give it and have an exit interview with the policyholder to make absolutely sure that the policyholder agreed with the conclusions of the auditor, to help the insurance company and the policyholder and the agent, literally not have to suffer the adverse consequences of bad or no communication. So we built with my brother Rob. Again, it's a long story, but I brought him in as a programmer because that's what he did. We decided to build a database application, and we called it Future Audit. So that was a very successful program for us. In fact, we licensed that software to about a half a dozen insurance companies once they saw we were moving our audits from a handwritten format to a database format. And it obviously, there's another long story along with that, but I started out with an audit that normally took 3 pages, and I had like 15 pages. So that wasn't going over so well. So we found quickly ways to solve that problem. But anyway, so moving forward, that became really a transformational part of our business, and we really grew a lot. And auditors were they were happier in their jobs. We had a higher quality workmanship, more accuracy. Time service, time service is time service. It still requires people to get out there and get the audits done and so forth. But what happened is that I back then in the 1990s, we were getting typically underwriting files from insurance companies. They would ship us the audit request in paper. We would then key it into a system to inventory it. I would physically mail that out to an auditor. The auditor would then go out and do the audit, do it on Future Audit, print up the document, and send it all back to us. And that was basically this process. So huge amount of mail, huge amount of paper. And one day I hired a person, and I'm not going to say this person's name, but again, necessity is the mother of invention. And I was so high on this particular person. I thought they were going to do a great job for us, great auditor. And they did for about 3 months. And then one day, stopped returning. I didn't see any work coming in, phone calls, weren't answered. And all of a sudden the weeks clicked by, and I had to go back to these insurance companies and say, this person's gone. And they won't send me my computer back. They won't return my phone calls. And I have to, basically ask the insurance companies to resubmit those same audit requests so I can get those reassigned. And it was incredibly embarrassing. It was frustrating. In fact, I think I freaked out. Okay. I thought to myself, I can't do this. Okay. This is not going to work. So I said to myself, this is right. This was in 1999, and many of you might not remember this, but there was a big deal in 1999 to 2000 that the web was going down. It was that Y2K, issue, and dates, and the computers are going to blow up. But I said to myself, well, it's kind of like one of those moments where it's all or nothing here. So we're going to have to move this to the internet and manage this work this way, so that the documents and all those things never actually leave our home office. People will just get electronic files. And so again, it sounds like, like a joke today, but because that's the way everything moves. But back then, that was a huge deal figuring out how to do that. And I hired a company out of Columbus, Ohio called M2NS after working with 3 or 4 other companies to try to come up with a design for an application for an internet-based tracking and management system. And that's how ultimately this company called Awesome Systems was formed, because so they built it for me. But one of the things I told that particular, that group is that there's a demand for this type of thing out there, and it can't be all me, because in order for me to, it's not inexpensive to build software. And so one of the things that I thought would make a lot of sense at the time, and I still think it made sense, was to try to, get more companies involved in this, other vendor companies, others, so we'd almost share the development costs of a platform that made sense. So, and that's ultimately what happened. And that's what one of the things that you were mentioning earlier, how that all got started. So again, if we're going to call that, 1.0, maybe 2.0 was the development of, internet-based management and tracking systems that pretty much everybody on this call is now using, didn't exist in the past. So did I cover your question?
Yeah, you did, Mark, and I think I've maybe heard that story over a bourbon too in the past. So thank you so much. So just sticking with technology with you, you may recall our first meeting. You may not. That's okay, because it's been a couple of years ago, and I think you spent most of that meeting challenging me and our company, which I'm not going to do this as a sales call, but about mobility, about Premium Audit 2.0, about employee productivity, and really thinking about where this space is going, and I'll call it deskless workers, because that's what a lot of the auditors are. But you really kind of challenged us on what you thought the next 5 years would look like, with how do you make this productive? How do you help the inspectors do their job? So do you want to give your vision on where you see the market going with mobility, with making the tools, making inspectors? And again, I know it's the next topics, or the last topics, around employee experience, but again, let's just talk about mobility and what it does from your thought.
Well, let's think about what we've done. So we have really, I would say that the markets have answered the call to really perfect the logistics, the management and tracking of, cradle to grave of a premium audit. So of an audit. So a policy expires, it goes into a automated process, and then basically where that process doesn't lead, but in the middle of the process is the premium auditor. And so the premium auditor, while they are no longer doing premium audits on paper and they're using software to do it, I think a lot more attention needs to be put into that area to help the premium auditor really do a much more efficient job in the field. And so the human aspect of premium audit, if you think about it, is that you want the auditor truly not missing the forest for focusing on the trees. And premium audit is a very detailed, you can get really mired into the trees and the numbers and all the other things to make sure that the exposures are correct. But one of the biggest parts of a premium audit really is understanding the operations of the business, how it works, okay, why it works, and whether or not the classifications truly encompass and describe the business, and also the operations of the business, and very, very specifically the duties of the various people in the business. So the process of creating a commercial insurance policy, an auditable policy, there are humans all the way through this. Okay, so it starts off with the policyholder and an agent, discussing, how this policy is going to be written. The agent is obviously competing with other agents or other insurance companies in order to write that business. The policyholder, if they understand how this all works, which most of them do that have been in business for more than a year or two, understand what the ramifications are of a person or a operation being placed in one classification or another. There are financial ramifications. So you've got humans involved. okay, all through this. And then, when it comes back, oftentimes there's humans involved with looking at it. There's humans involved that are auditing it. So having a process, the human side of a premium audit is essential. It will always be there. And so the question now becomes is what can we do to help the human side of this become literally, like I said, do the type of work that we really want you to do, which is, again, focusing on the forest and don't miss it for the trees. That makes sense.
It does. No, it does, which is a great answer. And you're actually even following our script, so that's awesome. Good job. So hey, so the next thing I'd just go into, so that's a great question about how the tools today in this like 2.0 or 3.0 version, but then let's talk about carriers too. And so we talked about field productivity, about there's, by the way, the next section, which is what everybody dialed into, so you have to hang on around GenAI. But really, if you think about carriers and what they're doing, how do you see some of the tools progressing to take some of the human, again, the humans are not coming out of this, we know that, but things like self-survey, how do they cover more risks more effectively? How do auditors cover? So how do you see tools like self-service or other productivity tools coming in to help your business and the carriers?
Again, there are various different ways that insurance companies can decide on how to handle an expiring policy. They can waive, audit completely, or they can then order it as a mail audit or a phone audit or a virtual audit or a physical audit or whatever type of service they think makes sense. The most important thing that everybody's trying to do, whether it's a carrier or us as vendors, is to make sure that the carrier gets the information that they need to properly understand the risk and make sure that the business is underwritten correctly.
So can I pause you there for 1 second and just direct that a little bit to you, because of course they want the report, but what about the data? Again, getting it in a mailed report probably doesn't help the carrier a ton. So
well, what's interesting is one of the things that's really changed is our ability to collect the actual records from the policyholder and make those available for the insurance companies. So because so much is now being done virtually, policyholders are submitting the actual reports to us, financial reports, P&Ls, payroll reports from various payroll services. And so we're capturing all of that and we retain all of that. So it's very, very helpful if there are ever real questions that come up about, where the data originated from, how we got the data from an audit standpoint, that's now being, for the most part, being captured, which wasn't the case in the past, Al, because a lot of physical audits, we would go there, the data would be presented to our auditors. The auditor would literally transcribe, information from reports onto a piece of software, but the original documents were not captured by us. So the technology is really helping in this aspect for insurance companies as well as like companies like ours, because what we're leaning into is making sure that we, if the insurance company decides that a mail process is the way to go, it's always a little risky, maybe very risky to some extent. So because you're really asking the policyholder to decide what they really want to pay. and there's this idea of plausible deniability out there, so it's like, well, how do I know, so that this person belonged in this class versus another class. So we're very careful, at least in our world, when carriers ask us to do this, is to make sure we don't have policyholders tell us, where people belong. We'll take care of that,
Sure.
So, and then we also, technology has helped us, that we have found, is by creating some forms where one size doesn't fit all, so they're actually being triggered based on classifications and so forth. But, we are finding that a lot of value in all parts of our services. So like for physical audits are not going away. I mean, there are many complex policyholders, complex businesses, I should say, really require somebody's eyes, on that operation. And so what I found interesting is how this has evolved, is that there really is a place for the different types of services out there. And you want to try to employ technology in all parts of those ones to make it as efficient for the carrier and for the auditor and for everybody else. So again, so we can get the information to the carrier as efficiently as possible, as cost effective as possible, to be a good partner. And then said use this technology that's both evolving and what we've already done to get a better result, for the policy, for the insurance company.
That's great. Thanks, Mark. So I'm going to move to probably the topic that people care the most about, maybe or maybe not, on this conversation, and it's going to be generative AI or machine learning or artificial intelligence. I'm going to give a little top line view of this, non-technology based, but so I've been doing this for a long time, been watching this industry, part of this industry for a long time. So I want to throw out two terms for everybody. And if you're not a technologist, don't worry, these aren't going to be terrible. But let me first, I think everybody's heard of AI, artificial learning. Everybody's heard of probably machine learning, which is a derivative of that, which is really kind of think about hurricane forecasting. So when you see those models, when you see a hurricane coming, they have a bunch of data and they build kind of a mathematical model, and it's called machine learning, and it learns and it gets trained. So that's kind of a machine learning model. So to predict the path of a hurricane. The latest term that everybody hears, and probably if you're an executive or if you are a CEO of a company or a president of a company like Mark, I assume you try to use generative AI in every sentence that you use because somebody thought you should. But so that's the joke about generative AI. The description is it's a term that every executive has to use, and then you'll hear another term called large language model, which goes on to how that works. But I've been doing this a long time. So the difference with generative AI, and I don't know if the audience has used things like GPT, ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot. We have our own product called Jesco Copilot. Without doing a ton of training, you can actually create content, not just figure out numbers or figure out if something's a dog or a cat in a photo. You can actually build content, and it works relatively well. And it gets better every day. And we build these models around it, which are pretty easy. It's called prompt engineering. So you just need to know the context of what you're doing. So you can kind of do that. So it's a little different than what things have happened in the past. And I think it's moving way faster. But Mark, you and I both agree, it's never going to replace a human ever. Like humans, this is to help a human. It's not going to replace a human. It just helps you. So I'm just kind of in your thought about, productivity, employees, carriers. Do you see some use cases? And I'll give you a quick example of everyday tasks that I use. So we're not recording this, but I don't need an admin anymore because I can use my Microsoft Copilot and record this. And then I can say, summarize this meeting for me, give me the top 10, action items. And I get it back in 30 seconds without having me to take notes. So I'm just kind of curious where you see the productivity for this for Premium Audit and kind of that generative AI. So sorry, I took a lot of time there, but
no, it's good. It's good. I'm sure everybody has those questions because it's the buzzwords. This is what's going around. This is actually what's driving a lot of companies. Like on Wall Street, anybody that's involved with AI or machine learning or NVIDIA, everybody probably is aware that chips are going crazy, because everybody wants to rush headlong into this. And so if there's anything I have learned over these years about technology is that you want to be very smart about the way you go into this thing I liken it oftentimes to this idea of building a house. The most important part of the house is the foundation. Okay. And so if you start off with a cracked or weak foundation, you're going to pay the price long term. Okay. So going into looking at, to me, I'm not the technologist. Go ahead.
I do want to pause you for that topic because for the whole team, I do want to say your data. So we talked about that data, getting that data in electronic format. The main thing I hear from folks like you, Mark, and carriers is that, well, you're training this stuff off of really crummy data. So I just want to acknowledge it. The models are only as good as the data underneath it, right? So that's, you know, so
Yes.
if the foundation's not great, then you're not gonna have, so I just want to acknowledge that, but I do see some really positive use cases in this field.
Yeah, I very much do as well. I mean, I don't think I could be more excited. To me, this could be like what I consider to be 3.0. Okay, to some extent, is, you know, where one was getting it off of paper, two is really building the ability to manage an expiring policy in a much more efficient manner, very smart manner. And I mean, there's so much more work being done lately, but this is a different a different idea here, because, and one of the things that I really want to underscore is what Al was saying, is that what I find so fascinating about this concept is that it's got nothing to do in our world in premium audit with less people. It's about being able to, with the people that we have, helping them be more productive. Okay. And so, you know, you have to look at and really study, whether it's a premium auditor or any other job in our industry, what are the things that the people need to do, and what are the things that people don't need to do. And then the question becomes, of those various pieces and parts, where would it make sense, okay, to throw some technology at it, but not throw it at it. Again, carefully study, what it is that where technology could make a difference. And part of the things we were talking about is capacity in the premium audit business. I mean, premium auditors, it's a very esoteric skill set. And it's a very important skill set. To be a premium auditor, not only do you need to know the accounting part, you need to be able to talk to people. You need to be able to understand businesses. It's a fascinating business. It's what's kept me in it since 1992. There's so many parts of it to me that I find fascinating. So, but there are other parts of it that I found to be, work. Okay. Stuff that, where I'm not 100% sure that it's the people that need to be that part of it. And that's kind of where I'm thinking, as we explore this technology and see where it's going, to determine whether or not, we can find parts of those jobs that can be like turbocharged, with some proper technology and careful planning, because you don't want to go down the road with certain technology and then find that it really isn't going to cover most of the use cases, or it actually creates more of a problem, for an auditor than it resolves. It's everybody who knows me knows that I'm pretty much all about the auditors. I mean, that's the center of my world. I want to do whatever I can for them to make sure that they are happy and productive and wake up every day ready, excited about the work that they're doing. And so if I can find ways to help them do that better, faster, and smarter, I've done that my whole career. And that's where I'm looking at ML, generative AI, things like that, as to where this could lead. And so that's kind of where we're at right now, is in the exploratory stages and really trying to understand, what parts of that make sense for this particular application.
Yeah, and so the couple things that we see over and over again because we've embedded ML into our product line, I shouldn't say ML, generative AI, I should use the right term. Just even like something simple as, and I mentioned just summarizing notes on a meeting like this, but description of operation. Who wants to write that? If you could actually write down, this is what this company does, blah blah blah, and ask the AI bot to write that for you, I think that's a kind of helpful use case. So I think there's some really, but I think they have to be very specific again, like saying, hey, look at all this data and write the audit. That's not happening. You're not taking a human out of doing that. So I think there's certain things that are super interesting and helpful. I would like to flip that to, and I know this was a topic at one of the last conferences, but fraud. Do you see these models helping with carriers and you guys actually finding fraud, or looking, proactively at accounts or policies that could be fraud, or not really?
Tell you what, there's so much opportunity in that particular area, using big data. I mean, so, you can, right? I'm not sure a lot of carriers are doing. Because we're not a carrier, Davies is a premium audit service. So we can only do so much with the data that we have. We don't own the data. The insurance companies own the data. We're just basically a conduit of data. But, looking at businesses where there has been fraudulent activity or misunderstandings, let's put it this way, okay, on classifications and true exposures, there's no reason why auditors and others couldn't be alerted to particular industries before you walk in the door. What has happened in the past in various businesses like that, truly what to look for. When you're doing an audit on a particular kind of risk, what has been uncovered in the past, things like that. There's so much opportunity to make the auditor more efficient and have the results of the audit be even that much more impactful, with data insights, more than just here's the data of this business, because that's kind of what we do. Here's what they did last year. Okay. But there's so much more that we could do, with that data, with, looking at, like I said, having historical data, to make it, like I said, to make it a more insightful report is something that we should be after big time in our business. Makes the job that much more important and that much more meaningful.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. And so here's where I think generative AI helps with that, because we talked about ML and big data models, but I don't think we're ever going to live in a world where, and Mark, you built many of the systems where every piece of data is going to be in the same data set, so you can model it off of that data set. So I think that's where GenAI comes in, to actually look at multiple data sets and understand that these 20 things, why they're not named the same thing, these fields, not the rows, but the fields, they're the same thing. So I can actually start to look at, not try to have a data scientist try to normalize their data. It actually does it. And those are some of the models that we see and we're using pretty extensively. And I think you continue to challenge us to do more of that. So thank you. All right, I only have two more questions. I think we're running. I don't think we have any questions, but I have two more questions for you. And now we're going to move on to employee experience and kind of the future here. And you've said it 3 times. People are still critical. How do we use these tools to entice the next generation, the younger folk, my son and daughter, your son and daughter, to do this? Because I was at a carrier a couple of weeks ago, and they have about a 6-month retention hiring MBAs out because they're still on a green screen, and somebody walks in and says, I this is not the life I want. This is not my life that I want to spend X amount of hours every week doing that. So like, how do you think about this technology and to move forward just to get the next generation? Because people aren't going away, right? They're not going away.
Yeah,
so
no, like I said, they're not. And from like I said, what I said throughout this is that's not the objective. Okay. The objective is to make people more effective. And so I have a son who's got a PhD. He's a data scientist. So I have been having this blasted into my ears, okay, for the last, since he was about 4 years old, about like he would even look at my systems and like, what a joke, like, what's this crap, So, I'm like, here's this crowning achievement. He's looking at it, it's like, that's all wrong, why are you doing it this way? Blah, 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 blah. So, I've thought, and I'll never waver in this, that the job of a premium auditor is a very fascinating job. You get to be involved with so many different businesses, and you're dealing with entrepreneurs, and you're learning about how everything works in this country, and from a very intimate conversations you're having with business owners. That's such a fascinating field. And so, and many of the auditors, that I have had the pleasure of working with for all these years, and are enthusiastic about their jobs. And so, again, it's finding ways, and I've done this my whole career, is try to find a way to bolster that. And then with the newer generations, they're completely intolerant of anything that isn't fully efficient. So we have to be aware of that. So, and there are inefficiencies in the process of what we do. Many of the things that we do today are the same things that we did in 1950. Okay, they're just they're put into a different format, but some of these processes are kind of the same. So I think focusing on anything that would be inefficient, so that when a person is considering a career and they look at something like this, that what they will see is the interesting parts, how and being bolstered by technology in any way that we can to keep this in, as a fascinating of a job as you are ever going to get. You know, whenever you hear people complain about their work, often say that it's repetitive. Well, nobody's ever said that about a premium audit career. It's not repetitive. There's no day that's the same. And so and so let's make it even that much better. And so, you know, that's the plan. And so we'll get, and again, carefully do it in a way where it's not where it literally puts people in the middle of it, have them control, you know, what happens, and let technology be the chariot, you know, that helps them do their work better, faster, and smarter.
Yeah, no, that's great, Mark. And I see it a couple different ways in that answer you gave, but you know, giving folks the choice, and like just thinking about having a button using Copilot or whatever, like you don't have to use it. You can write it, you can have it help you, you can have it do it for you, but giving them a choice of how they want to work, and but giving them that choice and not saying you got to do it here and do it this way. I think I see that in the younger generation. So last question, then if there's any questions, I haven't seen anything on the chat yet, but that's just fine. So we started off with your career history and premium audit, probably 0.5, or I don't know if what we would call that, -1.
Yeah, maybe -1. Yeah.
Was from a technology perspective to 1.0 to 2.0. I kind of gave my thoughts a little bit on where I think the ML and technology is going today, because it's going faster. And you talked about NVIDIA and what we're doing with GenAI. I don't think people can wait. It's not like this is 10 years away. It's 5. It's today. I don't know. I mean, like we've licensed Copilot for everybody. We have it embedded in all of our products now. And there's an excitement for adoption of that. But I guess keeping on the theme of employee experience, how do you see the industry keeping up with this? Because and I'm not just talking about premium audit, I'm talking about insurance. There's a heavy resistance to change in the insurance industry, and you know, maybe 1 or 2 tips that you can give to people to think about how do you keep up with. And let me give you one last thing. I've heard this quote many times, so it's not mine. The only thing that changes faster than technology is employee and customer expectations. And I'll use the example when Starbucks mobile app came out, I loved it. Whatever, that was 10 years ago. Now I hate it. I think it's the worst app I have on my phone. So they created a great expectation for me. And now my expectation is I want my coffee ordered before I even think about, like, if it knows I go in the car at 8 o'clock every Saturday morning to go get it, just order the same thing I've ordered the last 20 times. I don't want to
Exactly.
So my expectation has gone from this is a great app to, man, this is the worst app I own on my phone. So just in that context of the speed of things that are changing, you know, 1 or 2 tips that you think that you've seen that you guys are doing to keep up.
Well, I and the companies I've been associated with, Davies particularly right now, you know, very much are innovators, you know. So, but it's and having an open mind to look at all the possibilities that are out there, to me, is incredibly important. And I think you mentioned that insurance is slow to change. It's not a knock on insurance. Insurance is a very old business. It's fundamentally, when it boils down to it, it's about underwriting and underwriting profitability. It's about knowing your business, knowing the risks, proper pricing for the risks that you have, and then being very disciplined about how you work, and so you don't get yourself caught. I mean, that's what insurance is all about, as we know. So what I've seen in my career as well is software and solutions that have been hyped and, you know, and so forth, that just didn't pan out, and oftentimes they're very expensive. And so it's just incredibly important that that all insurance companies, in my mind, and certainly, you know, from a vendor company, we may be a little bit more nimble, because we can be, but we have a very open mind to looking at all the technology that are coming out there, what you guys are coming out with, what others are coming out with, and seeing and always asking that question. how can we use this? How can we know what we want to accomplish? What tools are coming into this industry that's going to allow us to be better, faster, and smarter, create better jobs for people? And so that would be my advice is that study it, lean into change, listen to what's going on, and and say, boy, I like it this way. I don't want it to change. It's not going to happen for anybody. It sounds so cliche, but it's the mindset, I think, that people need to have, but also be conscious of the lessons that we've learned in the past, and be careful, because so I can say that I've personally struggled with some software that does, that's been problematic. Okay, so that it's you're kind of fighting things. So you've got gains on one end, but you're fighting things on other things. And yeah, you mentioned earlier about the possibility of AI, writing a description of operations. That never crossed my mind, okay? Because that's one of the things where I really want a human to, because you hear a lot about, college students these days using ChatGPT, to write their essays and things like that. And I think you just use it as an example.
I just use an example, exactly.
I get it. But that's where caution has to be there, because again, it's speed is only good news if that speed increases the accuracy, of the data. So that's where we fall. My bottom line is quality workmanship. So it's got to be improve the end result for the insurance company, a accurate audit for the policyholder and the agency. And so, by keeping in mind those very fundamental concepts, it might help focus, people's attention on solutions that are going to cover all those spaces.
That's awesome, Mark. I think that's the end of our content, buddy. Thank you. I think we made it through.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mandy. I'll turn it back to you. I don't know. I don't see any questions in the.
I see one question in the Q&A box. There is just kind of a general question. It says, how can I transition to being a premium auditor after being on the underwriting side for most of my career?
Mark, you can answer that, because I can tell you how to write.
I'm more than happy to answer that. We are, Davies is a training organization. So, we offer, you can go right to our website and put in your name. We'd love to have you. So usually underwriters have a great insight, as from premium auditors. As my father-in-law once said, if you can't underwrite it, you shouldn't be auditing it. So, that's an important concept. And that's why many auditors have gone on and gotten their CPCU and other types of formal education through the institutes. So, but it's like I said, it's a wonderful career, and I encourage you to check it out. You can we train over at Davies. So check us out. Thank you for the question.
Thanks, Mark. That's great info. We just had another one pop up. It says, what AI components are currently available to benefit premium audit?
So I'll answer that one from what I know from our product set. Mark, if you know other ones. So the ones that we have currently available to GA today, as I mentioned, we call it Majesco Copilot, which is our generative AI tool. That includes very specific things, and I'll give you 3 use cases that it does it. By the way, Mark, I know you're offended. It can help you build a description of operations. It will help you summarize an audit. So if you just wanted to look at it and write a summary, or have it write the summary for you, it will do that, build that text out for you. And then it lets you interrogate any specific audit. So if once the audit's complete and you want to interrogate it as from the management side, if you wanted to look at an audit or a carrier, it lets you actually look at that audit and ask questions specifically about the audit, about what's in the screen. Mark, you can go through every tab that you would do in an audit way more than I can. But those are the 3 specific use cases that we have from a generative AI perspective. We currently have, on the claim side of our product, we have a subrogation intelligence tool that we do on the claim side, which why I asked the fraud question to Mark. We are actively trying to get data and build something, to help. Again, we're not gonna, like Mark said, everything we do is never going to replace a human, but to say, hey, this is something maybe you should put more eyes on. That I guess that's what how I would suggest the things that are available in the marketplace. So Mark, I don't know if you know any other Gen AI tools.
Yeah, how I was gonna answer that question to very directly on the premium audit for Davies, we don't. Okay, there is no application currently that we're using, yeah, either AI, machine learning, or generative AI. Davies is a multi-faceted organization covering, claims and subrogation and all kinds of audit work. And they have a group where they are currently employing some of those things, but I can't say specifically where and how. So, but this conversation was about, what we see about a premium audit, where it could go, and how we think that it could possibly enhance our offering. So that's where we're at with it.
Thank you both. A couple other questions in the chat, in the Q&A box, excuse me. So folks, if you do have any questions, feel free to type those in the Q&A box. The next one is, do you think AI can assist in the QC process of reviewing audits?
I'm more, I guess I'm a little worried about, I think we can, if there are common things that we would look at, Mark, we probably could build a model around it. So I'll just give you an example. For us, in our tools, we have hazard recognition inside of our loss control and premium audit, but it gives you a probability and a kind of a flag on what we think it might be, but we still require a human to look at it. We aren't trying to build a model that does it. And I think the biggest issue, so you guys may be familiar, let's just take lung cancer. And that's a terrible analogy, but I've been doing this a long time, and it's something that people can. So when you take an MRI of your lungs, it's always at the same angle, even though it's a different machine. They do it always. It's always looks exactly the same. Lungs look the same, so you can build a model around that. I'm not sure you can. Maybe you can find certain things in a QC in an audit. I'm not sure that every audit, like Mark said, it's every day is a new day, or every audit is a new audit. I'm not 100% sure, but Mark, you give your opinion on it. I don't know.
Well, my opinion is the answer is yes.
Okay. So you have a different one.
And I think it can. I in my mind, I've got an idea of where I think some things that we would do, and it would be a natural progression down. If generative AI is involved in certain parts of an audit, it maybe those parts of the audit, if it's working properly, is something that won't have to be reviewed. Okay, so because it's correct. In other words, it doesn't need a second look at it because it's accurate as it is. So, from a QC standpoint, from the way Davies looks at it, I mean, we look at every audit top to bottom, everyone. So all I'm saying is that if you didn't have to look at everything top to bottom, and you could take some things for granted, then it's possible that idea could follow. So good question.
Yeah, good question. And Mark, I think you need to spend more time with our product management.
Few more questions that we have. Why would carriers be interested in an audit software that has AI when you can just use Google Chat GPT?
Yeah, you can. So that's a good question. Step one, we're about 50-50 with auditors and our carriers and allowing Gen AI tools. So I can list the list, but there's still a lot of them that don't allow. No one's going to allow GPT. Let's start out that. If you don't know, OpenAI is a open source. That's what most of these tools are based on. All of your data goes out to the internet. No carrier's letting their data go out to the internet.
That's it.
Step one. They're not letting their data go out to Google. They're not letting their data to go out to a general purpose GPT model. And all of them are based off of GPT for the most part, which is owned by OpenAI. For like our use case inside a carrier, it is a single instance, so their data never leaves their own instance of the model. And then two, the model, we talked about large language models. Those general purpose models aren't tuned to insurance. They aren't context aware. So you can do great things. You can build music. If anybody is very interested and likes music, there's a website called udio.com. You can go put in 10 prompts and build a great 80s highway rock song. I'll age myself on this. And you'll go, that's not terrible, but it's not good. So But if you want to know something specific about premium audit, you need a large language model. You need somebody to actually train that model and build it, and it's called prompt engineering. So you need actually some specifics around it instead of just going to the general internet. And you can, but I will tell you, my kids right now, and I don't know what age a person just asked that, and I hate to go to that. My kids can actually tell what was written by GPT 3.0 or 4.0. They go, oh, that was written by 3.0. Oh, that was, so they actually know. It's just comes out generically. They can actually tell the model difference. So I think that's why companies, carriers are going to want to use an AI platform that's tuned specifically to insurance. So that's my answer. Mark, you.
Yeah, that was literally my answer right away was my, speed, integration, and security being number one.
Yeah.
So you cannot. I mean, we are so careful with our data. I mean, it's as we work with all of our carriers, the data security documents that we craft, we have no option to do something like that, nor would I. I mean, it's just the data is a little scary, as we all know, and it needs to be protected. So that's the short answer to your question.
Next question we have, if we start relying on AI, won't we lose some of our skill set because we rely on
it? Well, since I can't type or spell, it's been pretty good for me. And I don't think at my age I'm going to get better skills at that. So,
well, yeah, I mean, it's funny. It's an interesting question to me. It's sort of like, does anybody know mathematics less because we use calculators? So I mean, I use calculators for anything. I tried long division the other day just to remember, see if I could do it. So, you stick it at a calculator, bang, percentages, bang, boom, boom, boom. So again, from my perspective, I would look at it only as a tool. I wouldn't look at it as any kind of replacement. So it would always be, a tool in the toolbox, from my perspective, from a premium auditor that they could use or not use, depending on the circumstance. So if they use it, it's because they find it a more efficient way to get to from point A to point B. So that would be my answer to that.
Yeah, and I'll add on to that, Mark. I think the AI and ML models and GenAI models are about workflow and process, not about the skill. I think you still have to have the skills to do things. They just make the execution of those skills more efficient, which is what you've said.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's it. Yeah, believe me.
Go ahead. Oh, sorry. Okay. Thank you. The next, I think, is just a statement. It says, I would like to enhance the record collection process. We need to ask more targeted questions and give custom records requested based on those answers.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you that's part of what we do already, in our premium audit practices. So it's like we don't have a one size fits all. It's something that we've incorporated for many years, because again, if you don't ask the right question, you're not going to get the answer that may or may not, that can have a significant impact in the end result of a premium audit. And oftentimes people will not answer questions that they aren't asked. So part of where this could help an auditor as well is to look at what's happened in the past with similar types of risks and have a better understanding on what questions to ask. And that's where where that learning component that Alice so eloquently spoken about comes in play. It's computers don't forget. So if you've got it done right, these are all the things that tools can help, and especially people who are newer in this business, who people that have been around for a while, have seen a lot of different types of businesses. So you know what kind of questions to ask, and when things don't make sense in a business, but that's a really strong application for where that could be a good tool for an auditor.
It does. And now I'm going to bring this to our loss control side. It's the same application, but Mark, and I think you're a little worried. We actually do have a lot of data. We've been around for a long time, like you guys have. We do have a similar risk ML model that will look inside an address, but this is on the property side of it. But that's not going to necessarily, because it's all anonymized data. It's not going to say this property, you should do this. It's like in this 5-mile radius. So I think there's, again, now I'll put my moral and philosophical hat on. I think there's a certain level of privacy, whether it's a business or like, I don't know how deep and how creepy we should get into this kind of stuff. So there's a whole theme about like do you really want to go to the business? And I don't know what that threshold is, so I'm not underselling that. That's a great model for it, but I think there's also some ethics and ethical uses of generative AI that we have to be kind of careful about. And going back to Mark's question about security or answer, that's one of the things that carriers are struggling with, and what that is. So don't know if that helps, but that is the reality of where we're at.
We have a few more questions in the chat, but given our time restraints here, I'll just pick one last one for you to answer. It says, can you see a way for AI to gather all of the data on the risk and provide an auditor with a path to focus on? For example, claim data and risk management issues.
Short answer would be yes, but I will tell you the long answer, and Mark will, all the data is never there. So I'll answer, let you answer that, Mark.
I mean, that's it. I mean, when you ask the question of what's possible, it's not like we're talking about putting a man on the moon, I mean, and which is obviously been done. He put a man on the moon. So the question is really what it boils down to is the cost of development of a tool to that extent. I think you could probably, develop, a tool that is incredibly complete, but yet ultimately, as I describe the audit process, as I've known it, is there are human beings involved every step of the way, and a machine is not going to pick up the nuances, at least nothing I've seen so far, where ultimately the difference between a premium of the valuation or the cost of insurance being X, where, it's up to an auditor to really determine that, based on classifications and operations. Again, which is where, in my mind, that is where the premium auditor brings so much value, is that part of it. And so I don't think you would ever want to go beyond, as long as there are humans involved in the process, from underwriting to to actually selling that policy. That would be the only way you'd ever want to try to do it completely. Get a machine to put it together so far. If there there are people involved, we need to stay involved. So my answer.
Thank you both so much for joining us today. Very informative information that you shared with us. So I appreciate you taking the time with us. Glad that everyone was able to join us today. And please have a great day and a great weekend ahead.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for being Al. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Mark. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.